Hey everybody, it's Keagan here. I'm back with another video for you guys, and it's time for another movie review video once again. And today we're going to be talking about 4 movies this time, all of which I watched in theaters over the past few weeks. One of these movies I watched 3 weeks ago. I've been meaning to talk about for a while, but never got around to talking about it for some reason. I could have reviewed it in my last review that I did, but I didn't for some reason. And because of the character limit for titling videos here on YouTube, I had to change the title to something shorter. So I just decided to title this review as Recent Theatrical Viewings or some shit, I don't know. So, yeah, you know how it is. Anyways, let's not waste any more time. We got 4 movies to talk about, so let's talk about them. So the first film we're going to be talking about is the new Adam Elliott film, Memoir of a Snail. This one I saw in theaters 3 weeks ago, and I really enjoyed it. This is a stop-motion adult animated film from Australia, directed by Adam Elliott, who also directed the film Mary and Max. I haven't seen Mary and Max, but it's been on my watch list for a long time. Again, I haven't seen it, but I do want to check it out. I hear really great things about that movie, and I hear it's supposed to be a sad film, but I'll definitely check that one out one day. This new film from Adam Elliott is loosely based on his life growing up, from what I looked up on IMDb. This was a film I've been interested in for quite a while. I've been wanting to check out one of Adam Elliott's films for quite some time. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's a little bit of an overdue review, I know. I usually try to get my reviews of movies I see theatrically as done as quickly as possible, but I just haven't got around to talking about it. So as always, we'll get into the story quickly and then we'll get into my thoughts on it. So let's talk about Memoir of a Snail. So this film follows the story of a woman named Grace, who is voiced by Sarah Snook, who is also the narrator of the film. It basically follows the life of Grace from childhood to adulthood, growing up with tragedy and misfortune, after losing both of her parents to different circumstances and getting separated from her brother, who was like her true and only friend she had, and dealing with bullies and all the cruelty of the world. And she becomes like a hoarder and has a collection of like snails and stuff like that. And basically it's like a film, like the story of a person's life, which is usually the kind of things I like when it comes to storytelling. I've always found these kind of movies, stories, and stuff interesting when it's centers around the life of a character, even if it's like inspired by a real person. Because I've always believed there's always a story behind a story and things like that. But without giving away too much, the story is basically about the life and times of Grace through misfortune and things like that, and tragedy. And that's basically what the story is about in a nutshell without giving away too much. Now, I really enjoyed Memoir of a Snail. I thought it was a really great adult animated film. It was sad, it was funny at times, mostly depressing. It was well written, and I really like the animation style. In general, I'm a big fan of stop motion animation. I've always thought that type of animation was cool, especially as a kid. Speaking of stop motion animation, I recently rewatched The Nightmare Before Christmas over the weekend, and I still think that's one of the best stop motion animated movies of all time. But back to the subject of this film, it's a really sad film, and it's really well written, and it definitely feels like a very human-like story. And the voice acting is all really well done, and I really like the animation, as I mentioned before. And it's just a really great film that I really enjoyed. And it's definitely one of my favorite films I've seen this year. Again, I still haven't seen Mary and Max yet, although I do want to check it out one day. I know a lot of people say that movie is better, but again, I still haven't seen it, but I do want to check it out one day. I really, really enjoyed this film. It's definitely was well made for being a mature, an animated film targeted towards adults because of some of the subject matter it tackles. And it definitely deserved getting its R rating in the US. But overall, I really enjoyed Memoir of a Snail, and if you like animated films like this, especially adult animations, you'll probably enjoy this film. But overall, I thought it was a really great film, and I will definitely check it out again someday. But anyways, I don't have anything else to add, so I'm giving Memoir of a Snail an 8.5 out of 10. Excuse me. Now, the title for this next one is a bit of a mouthful, but bear with me on this. So the next film we're going to be talking about is Standing on the Shoulders of Kitties, the Bubbles and the Shit Rockers story. This is the newest film in the Trailer Park Boys franchise, and it was directed by Charlie Lightning, and it was released on December 6th of this year. And I actually saw this one the same day of its release. Now, if you've been on my channel for a while, you may know this already. You may know this, or you might not know this, but I'm a big fan of the Trailer Park Boys. It's one of my favorite television shows of all time. It's hilarious, and it always makes me laugh each time I watch it. And I also enjoy the other three Trailer Park Boys movies. Now, this new film is the newest Trailer Park Boys movie in over 10 years, which the previous film was Trailer Park Boys Don't Legalize It from 2014. I've been looking forward to this movie since I saw the trailer for it when I went to go see Diener 89 back in September. Yeah, and it looked really funny, and I figured, oh, a new Trailer Park Boys movie in over 10 years. I'll definitely go see this. So I saw it the day it came out, and it was packed when I saw it, and I had a fun time seeing it in theaters, but we'll get some more on that in a little bit. But let's take a dive into the story of Standing on the Shoulders of Kitties. So this film, it's a lot different than the other Trailer Park Boys movies. The movies usually center around Ricky, Bubbles, and Julian, but in this film, it mostly centers around Bubbles and his band, the Shit Rockers. So Bubbles decides to start the Shit Rockers, and he forms a band together, and they start playing at local bars and venues and stuff like that. And then one day they get a call offered to go on a tour with Billy Bob Thornton and his band across Europe. So Bubbles and Randy both go on the tour, and it's all going well, but then problems arose from both Billy Bob Thornton and Bubbles' bands. And the question is, can they stay together as a band, or will it all fall apart? And will Bubbles and Randy get stranded in Europe? And without giving away too much, that's basically the story of the film in a nutshell. Now, I don't really have too much to say about this movie, so we'll get by this one pretty quickly. But as I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Trailer Park Boys, and when I saw the trailer to this, I knew I had to go see it in theaters when it came out. And I did, and I had a lot of fun seeing it in theaters. It was hilarious, it was entertaining, and I had a lot of fun seeing it in theaters. And in my opinion, it's the best Trailer Park Boys movie since the second movie, Countdown to Liquor Day. It's definitely a lot different than the other Trailer Park Boys movies, since a lot of the characters from the TV show are missing. It doesn't have Lucy, J-Rock, Sarah, Cyrus, and many of the other characters. And most notably, Mr. Leahy, although that's because the actor who played Mr. Leahy, John Dunsworth, passed away back in 2017, so it's understandable why that character is not in this movie. By the way, rest in peace, John Dunsworth. But it does have Randy, Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles, although the film mostly centers around Bubbles and his band, of course. And it also has appearances by Ronnie Wood and Billy Bob Thornton playing as themselves. And the music in this movie is funny. It's really, really funny. Especially the song they play at the end, Standing on the Shoulders of Kitties. That one was really cool too. And like every Trailer Park Boys related stuff like the movies and TV shows. There's a lot of cussing in it, as expected. But all in all, I had a lot of fun with this movie, and in my opinion, as I mentioned earlier, it's probably my favorite Trailer Park Boys movie since the second one. But if you're a Trailer Park Boys fan, you'll love this one. I had a lot of fun seeing it, and I will definitely see it again when it comes out on physical. But all in all, I thought this was a blast and had a lot of fun seeing it. And yeah, it was definitely worth the price of admission seeing it in theaters. And if you haven't watched Trailer Park Boys in general, definitely check it out. It's one of the best Canadian TV shows of all time. It's so funny. But anyways, I don't have anything else to add, so I'm giving Standing on the Shoulders of Kitties an 8.5 out of 10. Next is the new Luca Guadagnino film that came out over the weekend, Queer. This film was directed by Luca Guadagnino, and it was actually the second film from this director that's come out this year. The other film was Challengers, which came out back around the end of April, and I saw that one, and I reviewed it a while ago. I really enjoyed that one. This new film is an adaptation of a William S. Burroughs novel of the same name. I've never read the novel it was based on, but I'll definitely check it out sometime. Now, if the name William S. Burroughs sounds familiar to you, then you might be familiar with the 1991 David Cronenberg film Naked Lunch, which that one was an adaptation of William S. Burroughs' novel of the same name. I reviewed that one about a year ago on my channel. If you want to check that review out, you can. That's a weird movie, but I really enjoyed that one. This new film I've really been looking forward to checking out since it was announced, since Luca Guadagnino is one of the best directors working today. This is the same director of films like Call Me By Your Name, Bones and All, the 2018 remake of Suspiria, I Am Love, and Challengers, as I mentioned before. So I saw this one on Saturday, and I really, really loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I know it's getting a lot of mixed reactions from people, but I can definitely honestly say this might not be a film for everybody, but I personally really, really enjoyed it. But we'll get to more on that shortly. But let's quickly go through the story of the film. Now, this film takes place in New Mexico City in the early 1950s, and it follows a man named William Lee, played by Daniel Craig, a gay man in his late 40s who lives in Mexico City. He spends most of his days hanging out with some friends he meets at a local bar, hooks up with men he meets on the streets, and overall lives his life in solitude. And then one day he meets a man named Eugene, played by Drew Starkey, it starts slow, but then the two develop a relationship for each other, and then later in the film they go on an adventure across South America on the search for a plant that is said to believe that the CIA and the Soviet Union are after. The story takes a little bit of a weird dive later in the film, but I don't really want to give away too much, but that's basically what the story of the film is about in a nutshell. Now, I personally love this movie. I was really looking forward to seeing this film, and it did not disappoint. But I can totally understand why some people are mixed on this. Some people like it, and some people don't like it, but I personally loved it. Hell, I loved every minute of it. It's definitely a strange film, to say the least. I will say this. If you are expecting this, don't expect this movie to be the next Call Me By Your Name, Challengers, or anything like that. It's totally different. Just don't expect it to be like any of those movies. It's definitely a weird film, but it's a really, really well-made film. The set designs are really well done. The casting was really good too. And Daniel Craig was fantastic in this film. And in my opinion, this is probably the best film that Daniel Craig's acted in, and probably the best performance of his career. At least in my opinion, that is. The music is really good, and I really love the soundtrack in the film too. It's a strange beautifully made and a surreal film that I personally really loved. And between the two films that Guadagnino has put out this year, I think this movie was slightly better than Challengers. Though Challengers is still a fantastic movie by all means, but I personally thought this movie was slightly better than Challengers. But I really enjoyed this film. Again, it's not a movie for everybody. You might like it, you might not, but I personally really enjoyed it. Again, as I mentioned before, I haven't read the novel it was based on, so I don't know the difference between the novel and the film, but I'll definitely give the novel a read someday. But overall, I thought this film was fantastic, and I will definitely check it out again, especially whenever it comes out on physical. Well, it's a film that was released by Mubi here in Canada, the same people that released The Substance and Decision to Leave. But the good thing about them, they put their stuff out on physical, so this will definitely get a physical media release one day. But overall, I really enjoyed this film, and if you like Luca Guadagnino's films, I definitely recommend checking this one out. But once again, it's not for everybody, but I personally really enjoyed it, and it's definitely one of my favorite films I've seen this year. But yeah, definitely check it out. And I'm giving Queer a 9 out of 10. And finally, the last film we're going to be talking about in this video is the new Paul Schrader film, Oh Canada. This film was directed by Paul Schrader, and it was based on the novel by Russell Banks. I've never read the novel it was based on, but Russell Banks is the author of The Sweet Hereafter, which I actually talked about the film adaptation of that in my last review. Now, Paul Schrader is the director of other films like Hardcore, American Gigolo, Cat People, the one from 1983, not the one from the 40s. He also directed First Reformed and a couple of other movies. And he even wrote the screenplay for a few of Martin Scorsese's movies like Raging Bull, The Last Temptation of Christ, Taxi Driver, Bringing Out the Dead, and a couple of other films. I haven't seen any of Paul Schrader's other movies, so this is the first film from this director that I've seen, but I have seen some of the films he wrote the screenplays for, specifically the ones from Martin Scorsese. I've actually been looking forward to this movie for a while because the film centers around one of the many people who were drafted during the Vietnam War. There were many Americans during the 60s who were drafted into Vietnam but ran away to Canada to avoid being drafted and sent to Vietnam to fight in the war. Which, a movie that is set during those times when people were avoiding the draft sounded interesting and very intriguing to me because that part of history was interesting to me. So I saw this film at my favorite theater last night, and unfortunately this movie was very disappointing. But we'll get to more on that in a bit. So let's go through the story really quickly, and then we'll get into my thoughts on it. Now, this film follows a man named Leonard Fife, who is played by Richard Gere. He's a man in his 70s or 80s now. He's dying of cancer, and during one of his last days, he's being interviewed by a documentary crew about his life before and after he fled to Canada to avoid being drafted to the Vietnam War in the 1960s. And during the flashback sequences, it shows him as a young man played by Jacob Elordi, who you might know from the movie Saltburn, Priscilla, and the TV show Euphoria. Now, as the film progresses, he's basically confessing some of the stuff he did during his time when he ran away to Canada and such. But then it becomes unclear whether he's telling the truth or maybe his memory is fading away because of he's aging and he might have dementia or something. I'm not exactly sure. And without giving away too much, that's basically the story of the film in a nutshell. Despite this movie having an intriguing storyline and a pretty good cast, including Richard Gere, Jacob Elordi, Uma Thurman, and Michael Imperioli, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. That's the guy that played Christopher in The Sopranos. Yeah, he's in this movie. But again, despite the story, some of the cinematography and the casting, unfortunately, this film was ultimately really disappointing for me. Like, I really wanted to like this movie, but I really didn't like this movie at all. The writing was all over the place. Like, the story was a mess. The dialogue was terrible. And it just was not a very good movie at all. Like, I really didn't like this movie at all. But this movie had so much potential. Like, I mean, you could tell a good story with a premise like this. Like, you really could, but... And I bet there was a good story in this movie, but it's not there. I bet if this movie had a much better script, it would have been so much better. But, unfortunately, that wasn't the case for this movie. This movie was just a letdown, by all means. Like, it was just, by all means, a big letdown for me. Like, I really wanted to like this movie, but, again, I did not like this movie at all. It could have been so much better. While it's not the worst film I've seen this year, I've seen far worse movies this year, but this was still overall a really disappointing movie. It could have been so much more than this. But at last, it was what it was, and it just wasn't very good at all. And I honestly forgot most of what even happened in this movie, honestly. It's just, the movie is that forgettable. But again, this is the first film from Paul Schrader that I've seen, and so far it's probably my least favorite. But I will check out some of Paul Schrader's other movies in the future. I know some of his movies can be a hit or a miss, and unfortunately this one was a miss for me. So anyways, I'm giving Oh Canada a 4.5 out of 10. Alright everybody, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more videos like this. And more reviews will be coming out soon. I think there's going to be 2 more movie review videos after this, and then that'll be it for Season 6. So yeah, stay tuned for more videos. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you guys later. Take care, everybody. Peace.